welcome to this Veterans Wellbeing Summit webinar. My name is Darren McManus-Smith and I'm a member of the Veterans Wellbeing Summit Organising Committee. I'm very pleased to be hosting today's session. In keeping with Wellbeing Australia's vision to support an environment where all Australians are engaged, motivated to learn and are proactive in managing their own wellbeing, we are gathering stories and people who have success in promoting veteran wellbeing, mental health and suicide prevention. Before I hand the microphone over to our presenter, I have a few housekeeping items to cover about this presentation. First, today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session and is accessible through the same link you're using now. Next, we'd love to hear from you during the presentation. If you have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to send it through the Ask a Question tab at the bottom of your player. We'll be answering questions at the end of the session. If we don't get to your question today, be sure we'll follow up with you afterwards. And last, we'd like to encourage you to share today's webinar with your social networks using the hashtag VWS219. Let's get started. I'd like to welcome Kelly Jackson from Eyes Front to talk about the celebration of service. We also have Scott McAndrew and Kelly Dadds. Kelly will introduce our other two guests after her short biography. Kelly is the founder of the charity Eyes Front, with the aim and purposes of supporting vulnerable populations, including veterans and their families. She's also the CEO of the International Institute of First Responders, a peer support organisation that empowers peer-to-peer support networks. Kelly served the country in the Australian Army for more than 20 years. She's worked on major projects such as the introduction of the Gap Year scheme for 17 to 24-year-olds, the introduction of domestic security and anti-terrorist arrangements on 5 high-risk bases, and cultural change in the Navy. Kelly's passion has always been the well-being of veterans, their families and the veteran community. Her current projects include introduction of Veteran Radio, which is a fortnightly podcast, and a community radio station. Kelly, welcome. It's always a pleasure to see you. Would you mind introducing Scott and Kelly?
Excellent. Thanks, Darren, and welcome everyone. Sorry for the late start today. Let me just share my screen. This is phase 2 of this, since I lost it all this morning after, hang on, slideshow, start. Okay. So welcome to everybody here today, and welcome my two panellists, Scott and Kelly. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy days, guys. And I know Scott's running a very busy business all over the place, and Kelly's running around after 3 toddlers, as well as doing multiple other things. So I'll come back to the introduction of these guys more specifically in a minute. I just want to thank Wellbeing Australia and the South Lake Macquarie sub-branch for sponsoring the Veterans Wellbeing Summit with the theme of action, hope and transformation, gathering stories and people who have success in promoting veterans' wellbeing, mental health and suicide prevention. So this webinar today is celebration of service, and that might irk some people when we say we're celebrating service, but we're not talking about commemorations. We are actually talking about celebrating our own commitment and the service that we have given to our nation. So we'll talk a little bit about more about that soon. Eyes Front's charitable purpose, as Darren alluded to, we are dedicated to ensuring everyone has access to the knowledge that can change lives. We're leading aware, informed, trained and safe peer-to-peer support networks, the promotion of the benefits of coaching and positive psychology, advancing the financial literacy, education and planning of vulnerable populations. And we are big supporters with outreach and collaboration between community, government, corporate partners to tackle complex social problems. And that's why I've had the absolute joy and pleasure to invite so many highly motivated, wonderful people to come along and speak as panel members with art therapy, identity, meaning and purpose. We had Kel for art therapy. I think we've had Kel for something else too. So it is all about collaboration, because we can't do it on our own. We do it together. So Kelly Dadds, a veteran, social impact entrepreneur and mum. Kel served in the Army for 22 years and completed 8 deployments. She was medically discharged in 2018. Kel has 3 little kiddies under the age of 6, and she finds peace in her busy mind through creative writing, drawing, mosaic projects, and also playing an active role in the veterans community. And Kelly is also the founder of the By the Left and continues to ensure that the public are educated about the diversity in the veterans community. And I've put a link in here to the presentation to Kel's Facebook page, By the Left, and I would strongly encourage everybody to go and like the page and to follow the great work that Kelly's continuing from last year. I had the absolute pleasure of leading the Anzac Day March in Sydney, and it was the year of my discharge, and it was such a pleasure. And on that day, it wasn't about women leading the parade, although we female veterans were invited to do so. I heard stories of Vietnam veterans who had never marched on Anzac Day, who felt inspired on that day to march. There were people there, I know, standing behind me who never thought that they would march on an Anzac Day, and yet it was with courage and honour that they did. So massive thank you to Kel for getting that program up and running. And I know you drew a lot of heat from it, but thank you so much, Kel, for coming along again today and for doing that great work. Now, I'm a massive fail on this, so I've got Scott here. I think I picked a great photo, Scott. I love this photo of you. I stole it off Facebook because I didn't quite load up your emails quick enough.
Okay.
I'm last minute lady. But you can also see the Lumberpunks axe throwing logo that I've got there at the top right of the screen. But I do have Scott's bio, so I'm going to read it out. Scott was born in 1969, although just looking at him, that's hard to believe. I'm not sure if he's telling the truth or not. He could be a wee bit younger than that. Grew up in Western Sydney and completed his HSC in 87. Worked in various customer service roles, factories, McDonald's, you know, all of the places where you actually cut your teeth and learning what being an employee is like. Scott enlisted in 1988. Went to Kapuka and then did his IETs at the School of Infantry up at Singleton there, wouldn't it be, Scott?
That's correct. Singleton it is.
Yeah, not a bad place. Lots of kangaroos.
Yeah, lots of kangaroos. Bad places, a point of view, depending on the climate conditions. Being summer is hot and winter is damn cold.
Yeah, agreed. And I did some work for one of the organisations up there. I'd never met anybody there before, and one of the guys who I was liaising with rings me and he says, "Kel, bring your swimming togs, we're doing PT." And I was like, what? Why have we all got to get semi-naked in front of each other? But I tell you what, just a deep breath and eyes front, which is the theme of my charity, and I went out there and participated in the PT and tried not to worry about the fact that I was standing there in my swimming togs, semi-naked, in front of a whole bunch of people I didn't know. But that's the military for you. So enough about me. Not in order, Scott's postings, 3 RAR, various roles from rifleman to platoon sergeant, 6 RAR, company sergeant major, parachute training school, platoon section commander to wing sergeant major, 2549 RQR, was the training warrant officer, and 2 Commando Regiment Air Operations warrant officer. Crossed over to the active reserve in 2015 and did continuous full-time service for parachute training school. You're lucky I know all of the abbreviations here, because if it had been Navy or RAF, I would have been stuffed. Gained a position in 2017 with the 2018 Commonwealth Games as a training manager for fleet operations, completed more time with parachute training school running various instructor courses, and started axe throwing as a hobby. Now, I've often thought about something as dangerous as axe throwing, perhaps not as a hobby, but more as a means to an end, but I'm pretty sure that what I was thinking is against the law. And then was offered a position as an axe coach with Lumberpunks. How do I get a job like that? But we can talk about that later. Within a couple of months, Scott became the venue manager for the Gold Coast and is now the operations manager for Perth, Brisbane and the Gold Coast. And Scott's words here, onwards and upwards. So good on you, Scott, and welcome to you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Man, and let's see if this works. I'm like trying out some really new things today, so I'm going to share this with everyone and hope that it works. Here you go.
Hi, I'm Sean. I'm good. Our fourth AXA coach, Jesse, he couldn't be with us today. He's too busy being a rock star in Europe.
Welcome to Lumber Punks, West End, Brisbane. Come on in.
Is this all right, Scott, if I play this?
That's fine.
West End, Brisbane, Gold Coast, and Perth. See you soon.
How cool is that? Now I've got to go back to my PowerPoint presentation somehow. Oh, PowerPoint, here we go. So I didn't actually show the video of throwing the axes, but it looks pretty cool. How cool is it, Scott?
It's cool. In fact, it's so easy, it's not funny. It's just another skill at arms. Very, very easy to pick up. 10, 15 minutes, you're good to go. What
else do you throw? Is it just axes or do you throw all sorts of other things?
Sometimes shoes, sometimes abuse. No, it's all axes. So we'll give you two types of axes to throw: a small tomahawk, for want of a better word, and then we'll step it up to a larger axe from there. That weighs almost 1 kilo, but it's very, very easy. If you can't throw it with one arm, we'll teach you to throw it with two arms.
Wow. What do you reckon, Kelly? You keen?
Very keen, Cal. Scott, you need to bring it down to Melbourne, mate.
You never know what's on the future. You never know.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Wait. Okay, so moving on. I have to move this over here so I can see properly. So the Celebration of Service Veterans Radio Program. We've done my radio training now and lots of cut my teeth on all these webinars. What the Veteran Radio is about is it's 26 one-hour programs broadcast through Podbean and Zoom, and that's so we get the audio and also the video, and so that we can use some written technology and some pictures to be more engaging. The first year's theme is Celebration of Service. So what we start off with, it's in 3 parts. We do 15 minutes talking about some trending issues in the veterans community, and I'm going to pick Kelly and Scott's brains, and if Darren stays there, because I can see him still there, we'll ask him too. We'll just drag you in as a panelist, Darren. And 15 minutes to share all of the organisations, people and places that cater for this trending issue. Now, if we were talking about creative therapies, we could potentially be talking about going along, getting a group, going along to Lumber Punks and doing some axe throwing, having lunch together, creating a whole day of it. So what we'll be doing is showcasing all of the different ways that veterans can integrate into community. There'll be some current issues, some issues about advocacy. We'll talk about adaptive sports. We'll talk once again about art therapy. We'll talk about employment and get all of those organisations showcased where veterans all across Australia can actually get access to these support and services. And then the second part of the program, which is the part that I'm most excited about, is the 30-minute interview with a veteran, where we actually get to talk to them about the highlights of their service and what they're grateful for. And prepare people for that, because it's actually quite a difficult thing. And I'm quite used to writing and reading, and as everyone can tell, I'm quite used to talking now. But not everybody is as comfortable with that as perhaps myself or my panellists. So we've written Icefront have written a one-day course where you can learn to speak your truth, share and celebrate your service. And at the end of that one-day course, what we hope is that veterans walk away with a 5 to 10 minute spiel on celebrating their service, and also enough confidence to be able to share and celebrate their service with other people in the broader community. And veterans can use this for Anzac Day services, or to talk at their local RSL, to talk at their local sporting organisation, or even just at a family barbecue. Because I know sometimes when you're asked to speak about your service, it's difficult to know, what are the things do I say? How do I actually really feel about my service? A lot of us feel very proud of what we've done, but we also have a lot of sadness and trauma, particularly people who have had to leave service when they've not wanted to, like a medical discharge or, something like that. So what we hope to do is to really encourage and to support these veterans to feel comfortable celebrating the highlights of their service. And I'm actually going to hit Scott and Kelly up a bit later to talk about that. So here's my, better go back. Here's my celebration of service spiel that I am going to share with you as an example. So just bear with me. Everyone good? Any questions though so far, Darren? No? Okay. So let's hope this works. Here we go. On her 21st birthday in 1947, Her Majesty the Queen gave a brilliant speech. Her words are a reflection of what I came to realise, believe and commit myself to upon graduation from the Royal Military College in December of 1988, at the tender age of 19 years old. If I may borrow some of Her Majesty the Queen's profound statement for my own momentarily to illustrate the commitment I made in 1988, I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong. The only difference for me was that I devoted myself to the service of my soldiers and their families, including for my own, for which I was yet to have. Despite some truly horrific and life-changing moments and experiences throughout my defence career, which covered various periods of time between 1987 and 2018, I left service on the 30th of April 2018 with mixed feelings, some scars and a bag of tools and what could amount to a lifetime of experiences and friendships that would continue to be birthed from our mutual appreciation of what it means to serve. I joined the Army 2 months after turning 18 years old. My family consisted of my mother, sister and younger brother. Completing my HSC and feeling lost and without direction or hope, I stumbled upon the multiple opportunities offered by the Defence Force. The RAF offered me a job as a communications technician. The Navy wanted me to be a musician, as I played both the piano and the flute, and the Army told me I wouldn't make it through officer selection. On that day, I discovered my grit and determination. It was always there, but on that day the lid was lifted and I began a journey that I suspect will never end. My son will kill me for that picture. Beyond the pain, suffering, tears, heartache, disappointment, discrimination and downright idiocy at times, I can find many things to celebrate and be grateful for about my service in the Australian Army. Today, I wish to share with you my gratitude, say thank you, and to celebrate my service. Before I laid my head down to rest last night, I took time to reflect and express my most sincere gratitude and appreciation for the honour to serve as a volunteer in the Australian Army. To be considered worthy of a Queen's Commission and trusted with the lives of my soldiers was and always will be one of the greatest privileges of my life. To serve beside and with so many courageous and dedicated people willing to give their lives in service of the nation inspires and motivates me each waking moment. The challenges of training, colourful language and quips from our stiff remain some of my fondest memories. Today I want to acknowledge my resilience, courage and grit. To have survived, thrived and prospered through the adversity, challenges and triumphs. Who bestowed me with these strengths and characteristics is for private reflection. I know I wouldn't be the person I am today without the benefit of my training, instructors, defence career, marriage and motherhood. So in the words of Matthew McConaughey, I take his lead. It is a scientific fact that gratitude reciprocates. So thank you to my soldiers who challenged and supported me. You taught me humility. Thank you to my colleagues who were as much my friends as they were my family. You taught me friendship. Thank you to my children who stood with me, behind me, in front of me, and sometimes carried me. You taught me endurance, commitment, and self-respect, and in turn, I was better able to respect others. I want to thank John Caligari for trusting me to coordinate his team in 2006. You gave me belief and confidence. Dave Lurs for encouraging me to kick on in the face of adversity whilst implementing the Army's most successful recruiting retention program. You taught me patience. And to Kate Shielberger for having a strong moral compass, integrity and courage in the face of horrific opposition and discrimination. You showed me humanity and gave me the courage to stand up for myself. I am the person I am today because of the light and shade of life, the chaos, the harmony, the bad and the good. I've learned to embrace each moment, look for the lesson, and sometimes just be still and enjoy. Looking back to the day I made the decision to join the Army in 1986 and my final day in 2018, I have no regrets. In fact, I celebrate my 17-year-old self's bravery and sense of adventure. I am proud that the 18-year-old never gave up during training, and that despite all sorts of challenges along the way, I have never lost what I value most, and that is my individuality, crazy hair, and passion for my fellow man. I stand here before you today, a proud mum, a veteran, and a responsible citizen of society. So that's mine. Thank you for listening. But this is what I hope at the end of the one-day course, that other veterans will be able to stand up and share as a point of gratitude and a point of celebration for themselves, if not for anybody else, but for themselves. So, celebration of service. I'm going to get on to Kelly and Scott in a minute, but I just want to ground what we're talking about in some positive psychology. So, what is it to have the good life and to feel hope and to feel gratitude and to feel good about things? So positive psychology is concerned with the good life, and it's a reflection about what holds the greatest value. And the factors that contribute the most to a well-lived and fulfilling life, positive psychologists agree that one must live a happy, engaged and meaningful life in order to experience it. And I'm sure that when Scott is standing there in the Lumber Punks studio, listening to the groups that come along, throwing axes, laughing and joking, I'm sure that you are getting that feeling of the good life. Are you feeling that, Scott, come through when people are there experiencing life?
I'll tell you what, Kelly, that's probably one of the most grateful moments about the job is taking people in, just like the military do, teaching them a new skill, having them apply that skill and having them feel confident about doing something. Well, it's a primal activity, so people feel empowered by doing that. And at the end of it, just seeing them laugh and smile and carry on with each other. And the beauty of it is, a lot of the times, is that maybe the black sheep within the group that everyone thought would fail actually achieved higher than they did. So it's empowering. It's a great feeling to have that. And a lot of people come back and enjoy that as well.
Absolutely. And Kel, I'm just going to use an example, even though I know that you are a highly decorated veteran. Just being a mum with 3 little kids, when I was down at your place some months ago, I was having the best time engaging with Angus, and he was in that little plastic car, and I had that tiny sort of 3x3 square metres of concrete, and we were screaming around there doing burnouts and wheelies and two spin corners on 2 wheels. For me, you know, the hour that I spent running around in circles doing that, that to me was the good life, and I felt happy, engaged, and I felt that everything that I was doing in that moment was meaningful. And I'm sure you feel that every day when you're able to interact with the kids or you're down at the defence sheds.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, most definitely, Kellen. I think that speaks to service as well, and the reason why most veterans get a lot of satisfaction out of their service is that it's not about us, it's about what we are doing for others. And that's the real focus. And so when you talk about celebration of service, you know, we all volunteered. And, you know, were you to ask me what was the highlight of my service, it was the fact that I had that opportunity to serve my country. That was the reason why I joined in the first place. So.
Yeah. And when I just go to the Dalai Lama's quote here in his commencement address at Tulane University in 2013, he puts it beautifully. We have no guarantee about the future, but we exist in the hope of something better. And I know Viktor Frankl, who was a prisoner of the Nazi war camps, he spoke about hope, and he said, and he talks about in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, and he developed this concept of logotherapy, and he said the people who survived are the ones who held on to hope that there was something else better, or the hope that their family was still alive, or the hope that, you know, something good would come of it. And he said the ones that he saw all of a sudden just die, even though they'd survived hunger and, you know, starvation and beatings and tuberculosis and all sorts of horrific traumas, it was the ones who lost hope who actually faded away and died. So, you know, keeping with the theme of this, and I know it's something that my charity Eyes Front and my board are dedicated to, and that is about creating opportunity for people to stay engaged and to understand, because some people do have a potential to catastrophize. I have a son who just thinks the world is always coming to an end, but it's when I can convince him that there is something good to hope for that his entire demeanour changes and he becomes more engaged and more involved. So just going on to the next bit. So gratitude is also a concept of positive psychology, and definitely it's something that the public speaking course is going to be really focusing on, is how do we verbalise gratitude and how do we find things to be grateful for in what can sometimes be a really overwhelmingly difficult space that you may have come out of. And I just want to sort of showcase some of the things that came to my mind. We as veterans are actually really good at gratitude, and I think we do that through the concept of commemoration. So we're very grateful and we acknowledge the service and sacrifice of those who came before us. So I actually think from that perspective, this is why veterans are very resilient, is because they actually have this inbuilt schema of gratitude. Guys, have you got any thoughts on that? I mean, Darren, I know you're heavily involved in RSL activities. What's your thoughts on commemoration?
Look, commemoration is a very important function that not only the RSL but veterans, because it's the veterans that actually push the commemoration. You have supporting entities that support, but without the veterans, there is no Anzac Day, there is no Remembrance Day, and it's something that allows us to not only remember those that have paid the supreme sacrifice, but you know, we hear it every Anzac Day Remembrance, but you do. You remember your mates, you remember your friends, and it's about gratitude. What other organisation, other than the Department of Defence, allows somebody to achieve what they can in defence?
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Scott, on commemoration and about, you know, this inbuilt schema of gratitude that's actually built into veterans?
What I can say, just from personal experience, is that commemoration is a reminder of what you're here for. Mm. What are you doing? Where are you going? Where have you been? And it's just it brings everything to light. It supports what are you doing. So if you have any doubts or not understanding of where you're going or how you're moving forward, then you should be checking history. And history is part of commemoration as well. And once you figure that out and understand, wow, everyone's put themselves on the line. Yeah. So I'm not going to stop. I should be back on the line. I'm understanding the sacrifice that those people have made, and it should set you back on the right track again.
Yeah, totally. And Kel, look, I know commemoration is something that you've done a lot of work with, and I'd invite you to talk about this wonderful initiative by the left and the change that you would like to influence in the RSL and among the population on how we see commemoration and Anzac Day and any of those commemorative events.
Yeah, I guess there's two aspects to commemoration, Carl. The first one is it's about public acknowledgement. Most veterans don't like to use that term, but it is the public's opportunity to say to the defence community, to our veterans, thank you so much for putting your life on the line for us. And that's why so many turn up on Anzac Day and to those Remembrance Day services. It's not just about that family connection. It really is about connecting and thanking current serving veterans from all aspects of conflict. The other part is, I guess, let's think about the very first Anzac Day service. It was run as a coping strategy, effectively. There were all of these people on the front line affected so much by what occurred at Gallipoli on the 25th of April. And the only way that they could cope with that tragedy was to come together and to honour the service and sacrifice of those who didn't come home. And that's also what we're looking at with By the Left. It is about supporting your mates on Anzac Day. It is a really tough day. As proud as most veterans are on Anzac Day, marching along towards the cenotaph to honour the service and sacrifice of your friends, those who haven't come home, but also to thank your family. So what I'm really pushing this year is march on Anzac Day, do it for yourself, but do it to support a mate as well. Get in contact with someone, reconnect, because that is where the strength is in our network, supporting each other.
Yeah, totally. And I can't wait to see all of the wonderful reciprocal benefits that come from the By the Left campaign, and strongly encourage everyone to share, look that up on Facebook and to share it widely, and do what Kel says, grab your mates. I know, leaving service in 2018, leading the Anzac Day parade, it was the end of 30 years, a 30-year association with Defence for me. And the next year I sat at home on my own, and I think I tried to avoid the whole thing. But, because I'm not big on going out and drinking and two up and all of that. But I think if you do what Kelly says and find your mates who are willing to do it in the way that you find is respectful and comfortable, absolutely use that day. And for me, it's a day where you get to look your mates in the eye and to really know whether they're okay or not. I know today is Are You OK Day, but there is nothing better than eye contact. I'm a big eye contact person, to the point where sometimes it makes people uncomfortable, which I don't mean to, but I can tell what's going on for someone usually when I look them in the eye. And my kids will often say to me, just by a look, they know what's going on, whether they're in trouble or whether I'm happy or sad. And I think that's such an important thing to do, is face-to-face, not just the welfare check, send a text message, but actually look someone in the eye and genuinely acknowledge and be present there with them. So just some more stuff about gratitude. Practicing gratitude means paying attention to what we're thankful for, to the degree of it feeling more kind and compassionate towards the world at large, and it can motivate people to make positive changes in their lives. I can remember, and just a very quick story, years ago I had a very, very busy job. I had 6 staff who had 6 massive portfolios, and I had a couple of staff who really just every half an hour they were in my office asking me something or chatting or whatever. And sometimes people would come in if you had one of those sort of easy chairs in your office, and they would just sit down because it's an invitation. It's a comfy chair. It's facing you. You know, can entertain anybody about all sorts of strange stories and antics that I've been up to. People would come in and sit down, but it meant that I didn't get my work done. So what I did is I moved the easy chairs out. I put a work desk, a whiteboard, and 6 chairs. And I said to my staff, if you come to my door and I don't look up, I'm busy, just come back later. If I look up and I say, yep, is it a quick one? Ask me. If I say I've got time, I will leave my computer screen. I will walk away from the barrier of the desk between us and come to the centre of the room and invite them to sit down at the table, and I'm willing to give them as much time as they need to talk about whatever is going on. And what ended up happening is they respected my time and the fact that sometimes I was writing complex documents and being interrupted was problematic for me. But they also respected the fact that when I did give them my time, I was completely present. I didn't have a mobile phone sitting next to me. I didn't have a computer. The notifications were turned off on my computer so I couldn't hear emails coming through. And I 100% gave them my time. And I think that's what we get to do through commemoration. And if you are asking someone if they're okay, being able to be 100% present and waiting for them to actually respond, or looking them in the eye, or spending a bit of time out of your busy day with them is far, far more beneficial than perhaps just a poster or a throwaway line. Not to denigrate the Are You OK movement, because I think it's fantastic, but definitely just having that more personable approach. Guru, this is our conversation now, even though I've been trying to make sure I'm not doing all the talking. So anyone, what are some of the highlights of your service?
Oh, Kelly, I think it's for me. Well, I noticed on your slideshow, you've got a couple of photos of Al Scott.
Oh, I have, yeah. And I fly with Al and one of a female army sergeant. It was great.
Ah, right. I'm surprised. Did he out-talk you?
Oh, you know what? There's another story in that. You know, because Al is a fantastic talker.
He is. Sometimes
I'm not a great listener, and sometimes you can only listen to a story so many times. So what I invited Al to do, and Al's a great friend, he's a great human being, and he's the son of a Vietnam veteran, so he knows all about this. I encouraged him to write it down. And when he gave me the privilege to read some of what he wrote, it was vulnerable, it was raw, and it was beautiful. And I think transposing his ability to talk into the written word was really beneficial. So yes, he can out-talk me, but I'm also quite blunt when I can't listen anymore.
Nice. But what I'm alluding there with the highlights of service, when I saw the photos of Al, I know Al, and I've known him for such a long time. And, you know, one of the best highlights of service is it's pure mateship and friendship. To me, is one of the biggest ones. You're surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals, and you're all on the same mission, and you're all trying to get the same job done. And it's a great highlight. So you're coming together, you're meeting these amazing people that are the same as you would hope. And you're all doing these amazing things. So you're asked to do something that not many people are asked to do. Like, you're asked to lay your life down on the line. The country and your mates. You might go on a peacekeeping mission, and you're helping other people in other countries, because I'm sure here in Australia we have such a well-founded moral understanding of what it means to be a mate and help someone out that's less fortunate than you. So that's probably one of the biggest highlights of my service. Some of the individuals I've met and formed friendship with, they're going to last till I get in that box and nail it down, pretty much.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. Kel?
Yeah, look, I agree 100% with Scott, and I guess if I was to add anything further, I'd talk about the opportunities to experience history. War is history that people talk about, and being on the ground, living the moment, seeing the impact that wars have on cultures, on societies, on our veterans, is a lifelong memory. So it really comes down to opportunities, I think, would be the only addition that I would add to what Scott just mentioned.
Thanks, Kel. Darren, how about you? What's the highlight of your service?
Look, I've got to agree with Scott and Kelly, but I'd like to add something, and I think it sort of blends with what Kelly was saying. It's my life experiences. I'm 47, and I joined at 17, and I've spent 30 years in or around the military and the Department of Defence. I've never been able to extricate myself from it. It is addictive, and I'm sure Scott and Kelly would agree with that. But it's my life experiences. Recently, I was invited to a Scout training weekend, and that was the question that was actually asked of me. What was the highlight of my time in and around defence? And it wasn't so much what any single event. It was those life experiences that you cannot get anywhere else. And these are things that have put me in good stead for the future.
Yeah, and you heard my highlights of my service, and I think so many of us could sit there and just name so many things, but one of the ones that I'll never forget, and that was what the drillies used to say on the drill square, and it maybe it was because I didn't have a background in a family, the defence family, maybe because I was very young, and I can find humour in almost anything. But, when they were trying to threaten us by pulling our arms off and sticking them in our ears and riding us around like a motorcycle in order to get us to hold our arms tight by our side, I actually thought that was hilarious, which, of course, earned me a couple of extra parades. And of course, Kelly knows, I mean, look at my hair. My hair's always been like this. And it would be constantly, Jackson, do something with that rat's nest, and I'd be like, what can I do? But and they're the tiny things. I never deployed, but I had the great and absolute pleasure of supporting people who did before they went, when they came back, and their families. So sometimes it's the little things that you can see as highlights and be grateful for. I talked about a couple of people who've inspired me. I had Al up there. I mean, that guy is so tenacious, it's not funny. He's delivered a baby. He's jumped out of aeroplanes and survived all sorts of, I think he's had 26 surgeries. John Caligari, who continues to serve, and he's got the Oasis Soldier Recovery drop-in centre going up in North Queensland, doing great work there. Dave Lurs, who is an absolutely stellar human being, and whenever I reached out for help, he'd always say, Kelly, you can do it on your own. There's too many alligators in my boat, but never stopped supporting me. And, he just did stuff with patience. And Kate Schilberger, who was my last boss that I ever had, she stood by me, even though I basically said, you can step away if you want. This is going to be a dirty fight. And she didn't, not for 1 minute. So, there's some people who've inspired me. Darren, who inspired you through service?
I'd have to say David Connolly. David was, when I first got to parachute training school, was a corporal. He married a good friend of mine, Sylvia, the second only female at the time, PJI. But years down the track, through his repetitive parachuting, he lost a leg due to medical complications. Dave struggled with that for a bit, but after a little while, he remembered who he was, and we got it with both hands. Represented Australia at the Invictus Games in 2014, and then last year was part of the rugby gold medalist team. And Dave, he really does inspire anyone that meets him. He's a fantastic guy, a real Aussie larrikin, but he's a man that just doesn't give up.
Yeah, great. And what about you, Cal?
Look, I won't name any particular names, but what I would say is that people that used to inspire me in uniform were people who used to work hard, but kept a smile in their face at the same time and didn't lose their human side. And I think that's a really important thing in such a serious job as the military, keeping your human side there. You know, it can be something as simple as remembering the birthday of one of your soldiers' wives and giving them 5 minutes to go and make a quick phone call home so that they can make that connection. They were the people that really used to inspire me because I wanted to work really hard for them, both up the chain and down the chain as well. You know, some of my soldiers were exceptional at what they did, and that made me want to work harder.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. You know, just the privilege to work with some of those human beings who, you know, when I was meant to be there to support them, they were actually supporting me, and you know, they're things that you never forget. And what about you, Scott?
Oh, this is the hard question. It's a hard one to tie down, but I'd like to support Kelly's comments there as well in regards to keeping the human side. So the first individual, and I'll name, is Nick Welsh. He was my CO at 3RAR. This gentleman, commanding officer, knew his staff implicitly from bottom to the top. So he could catch up with you 1 week and 2 weeks later, walking past you, stop you, and obviously, of course, you'd be a little bit frightened because he's commanding officer. He'd ask, "Oh, how'd you go with that tax appointment or whatever it was?" And you're like, wow, this gentleman knows his staff. So it's a really important tool of leadership. A couple other gentlemen. One was my first section commander in 3rd Battalion, a guy called Rags Clothier. Now, I was scared of this guy. He was recon, he was the sniper, he's a paratrooper, and I'd only seen that in war comics and was like, oh my God, who is this gentleman? 4 foot nothing, cheesy mustache. But from day one, he set boundaries. There was no left or right. Here's your boundaries. You're going to stay within those boundaries for a certain period of time. Once you've proved yourself amongst those boundaries, then I'll offer you a bit of grace and gratitude from then on. So it always held well with me that it's like, what is he doing? Why is he doing this to me? What's the point of it? And then later on, you understand what the point is. It was almost like a rites of passage to make it through the gates to get to where you need to be. And the third individual was Mark Ross. He was my captain at the parachute training school. And he did the same thing to me. He goes, oh, you're an aspiring platoon sergeant at some stage. I've got some paperwork to write or this to do or that to do. You're going to do it for me. And straight away, other side of the world, who's this lazy fella? Seriously, why is he getting me to do all his paperwork? But I understood later on, a couple of years later, boom, he's groomed me. He's done some fantastic things. He's actually shown me mentorship. Yeah. So anyone that's an outstanding mentor in the military, and my goodness, you've worked with some of the best of them as well, they stick with you for the rest of the time. You know, they've got a human side and they're outstanding mentors. And I think that's a valuable skill that veterans can grow and pass on to other people as well.
Yeah, totally. And unfortunately, Kelly's had to leave us because her husband is currently away serving and she has to go and pick up the kiddies. But thanks very much to Kelly for joining us today. So I've kind of got this broad, very, very broad question here. What are you grateful for? And I think Kelly touched on it before. She said, I was just grateful for the opportunity to serve. And as simple as that sounds, unless, of course, you have served and you know what it takes to get yourself to that point and to participate and be part of that culture and to deliver according to your job, to make sure you look after your mates, that actually is a lot to be grateful for. And I've already spoken about all of the things that I'm grateful for. And, you know, I'm as a young lieutenant, when I graduated, I was really grateful for the mentoring that I got from my soldiers. And I suppose I was I've always been lucky in that we all know what our rank is and what our jobs are. It doesn't actually need to be pushed into anybody's face. It's when we appreciate the gift and the skills and the knowledge and the attribute that everybody brings to the party where we can work better and in a more supportive manner. So I'm really grateful for the fact that my soldiers trusted me and I had the pleasure to serve them. So, Scott, what are you most grateful for?
To be honest, you've hit it on the head. I'll just support by fire on that one.
Okay, awesome.
Everything you just said there, just mate, I'm grateful to be here to start with, and everything you just said was, yep, straight down the line, exactly what I was going to say.
Excellent, Darren.
Kelly, I've got nothing. You've taken it.
I've been practicing talking for a long time, as you all know. My other question here, and I did have another slide with some, and we've got time to talk it through. What skills did you learn and have taken you on to thrive, prosper in your civilian life? So I know, Scott, you've gone into an operations manager's role, and certainly when I read your bio, I think, oh God, everything that you would have done in the military would have prepared you for that role in civilian street. But what are your thoughts?
It's more than prepared me. It's made it easy. The hardest part of it.
Don't tell anyone.
Don't tell it. It's a secret. Shh. Join the military, you'll find out. No. The easiest things, you can transfer those skills. It's about delivering those skills. That's the hardest part that you need to learn. I had to learn very, very quickly, thrust into, I had to train 2,500 volunteers with a team of 7.
Oh, for the games, yeah.
I was the only male in the team. So this was my first challenge, to be honest. Overcome that, sat back, watched everything that was going on and learned from the people around me. Then you have to learn the nuances of working in the civil sector as well. If someone dies, yes, they will have to understand that time is off and everything else, as opposed to everyone, I see you laugh at that one, everyone being on mission. So it's very, very important that you retrain your brain to understand what you'll need on the outside. Some of the best skills I learned though was, and I don't do this very often, but it's about being a quiet professional. There's an old adage out there, under promise, over deliver. I think that's one of the best skills I've learned, is how to sit back and say, yep, sure, no worries, we can do this, we can do that, with the sound knowledge of mind, knowing that that's what I can and can't do, staying within the boundaries. And then when it comes time to deliver, everything you deliver is, it's 100%.
That and more.
Yes, that and more. And everyone is, from what I've seen now, is extremely grateful of that. So you set yourself, you set your bar, maintain your manner and demeanour. It's so important for people to recognise you, especially on the outside.
Yeah.
And that's why I got a job throwing axes. They saw something that was there and maintain your professional drive. So everything you've learned, take it outside, tone it down just a little bit, and then you'll go great guns. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I need to listen to that a little bit more. I always fake it till I make it, over promise, and then I'm scrambling to deliver. What about you, Darren? I mean, you've done some amazing work. You've taken teams to Canada. You've done adaptive sports. You've run an RSL sub-branch. You've got this Wellbeing Summit, coordinated with your team with, so what did you...
I think it's a word, Kelly. It's appreciation. It's appreciate the moment, appreciate the opportunities. It's so many things in life just go by, and if you don't appreciate it, you don't really understand what you've been given. And that's, for me, it's appreciation. It's appreciate the small things, the big things, and live in the moment.
Yeah, great. And for all the things that I learned in my military service, and I've been able to take on to Civvy Street, and I'm still practicing. I'm not actually very patient, and I set high standards, and I like to jump for nirvana and I'm still trying to appreciate that I need to tone it down. But I think the thing that I'm really appreciative of is, joining the Army at 18 and not really having a concept of who I was. I really had time through my training and through the time that I served to work out who I was as a person and what did I value and what my principles were. And I say to people often in the ex-service space, or to anyone, going to have a job, or to my children, I always say that if you know yourself and you know who you are, what you stand for, and you stick to that, then that takes away that element of wondering when you meet someone. So, most people, if you were operating in the ex-service space and you mentioned my name, people would probably describe me in a couple of words or a sentence. And it's because I try and stick to who I am authentically, and, like it or dislike it, it comes from a place of good intent, and it comes from, yes, I'm passionate and driven, but it does come from a place of caring and love. And I stick to my ethical principles regardless of sometimes if perhaps the consequences or the results are going to be not so great for me. I truly believe that knowing who you are and being able to consistently communicate that to people is really important. And that's something that I believe that, I've taken and has helped me endure and prosper post-service. Any comments or thoughts?
No, that makes perfect sense, Kelly. That sense of knowing who you are and sticking to that is a very valuable tool. Everyone's trying to push you left and right these days because maybe what you're saying is could be less than popular.
Yeah.
Or it could be not what the group needs. But I think sticking to your guns, that's a great jewel to acquire.
Excellent. Now, we've only got sort of a few minutes. I'm going to push Darren to let us go over a couple of minutes since I couldn't get myself logged in.
I'll do my best, Cal. I'll let you know when we hit that critical
Awesome.
moment.
So just a couple of minutes. So I talked before about, veteran radio, and we talked about that there's going to be some topics that we're going to talk about in the veteran radio, and that is some of the current issues or trending issues. Have you guys got any burning desire or thoughts on what you think that the veteran community or the families in the veteran community are just dying to know or need to know, or would like me to go and hunt down a panel of, or an expert in a space so that we can present this in veteran radio?
Kelly, I was so impressed with your presenter last night in communication. I think
Justine, yeah, great.
I took that home and I spoke to my family as well. That is such a valuable tool that regularly forget its importance. And just those things you brought up last night, and I honestly believe that's something that you really need to emphasise, communication.
Definitely. So we're definitely going to get Justine back onto veteran radio, and I've already spoken to her about a package to try and get some of the RSL sub-branches to sponsor Justine to come along and do that presentation in their communities. And I'll hopefully talk to Clubs New South Wales as well, because they have a massive impact on their local communities. Scott, is there anything that you think, and it doesn't have to be a welfare issue or a challenge, it could be just something really exciting that veterans should know about?
I think the best thing is it just gives everyone a voice. They can tie in, get it out there to start with, and have them understanding that veterans radio is out there, and that depending if it's open floor or whatever, there's a wealth of people out there that can talk on veterans radio. There's so many fantastic veterans doing amazing things within the community at the moment, and have all their own podcasts already. If they're on board, I'm a big fan of Order of Man at the moment, and some of the team that are on the Order of Man is just incredible in regards to who they are. And there's a hell of a lot of ex-military people on there. I won't call it touting their wares, but spreading their wealth and wisdom throughout the communities. So I think the biggest thing there is that the people at your fingertips that you know of, and promote Veterans Radio just a little bit more to get it out there, and they can push the issues through.
Yeah, great. Well, look, we're so excited about this. This is such a great opportunity to just start a conversation and give people a voice. And the 30 minutes interviewing a veteran, highlighting the service. Obviously, you had a very quick example of mine. I think it's 3.5, 4 minutes that I actually speak for. Any thoughts on how we could, enhance that celebration of service piece, or any reflections on perhaps what I shared or advice to me?
No, I think it was a good one. It hit it right on the head. Sometimes we do sit around and talk to each other and concentrate on the stuff that wasn't as popular or not as shiny. You've taken it to the other side and understood it was clear how grateful you were for what happened and what you've moved through as well. So I think keep concentrating on that side for celebration and service. Definitely, 100%.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Scott. Darren, I'm sorry, I'll have to cut you off there. I'll get your advice later. I just want to flick through to the end and just remind everyone that equine therapy is on at 7 p.m. and trauma recovery at 8. And if anybody is in need of any assistance, please reach out to Open Arms, Lifeline, or the 1-800-RESPECT. And big, massive thank you, Scott, for taking time out of your day today. Wonderful. I really want to, support what you do at Lumberpunks. I think it is great. Keep up the good work. I can't wait to get up there and throw some axes. And but I'll insist you guys have to be there. It'll just make it more fun. I'm terrible at throwing a grenade, so you can imagine what I'm going to be like throwing an axe.
I'm sure you can throw a shoe. You'll be fine.
All right. Thanks very much for today. Thanks, Darren. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Kelly.